We have the subject of democracy, freedom, and consciousness. And today we have been considering to go more deeper into the aspect of freedom and consciousness in it. We have been mentioning that in the title for today that freedom is not to be taken for granted. It requires an ongoing inner encounter with the reality so that we don't settle in words and concepts, but we are in touch with the alive reality. And this is a big difference, and I would like to bring first of all the attention to this aspect. When we are experiencing something, it is real. But afterwards, it becomes a memory. And then we have remembrances, we have words and concepts about it. And then we convey to somebody else. The other gets these words, these concepts, and translate it through their past. And so to speak, understand it in their way. So we are often not aware of the fact that we are projecting through our past, our conditionings, when we are, so to speak, seeing things. Only when we are experiencing something directly, the directness of the connection to the situation is there, but still the way it gets interpreted is through our conditioned mind. So we have to learn a way of being with the reality in such a way that we can observe what way this conditioning is working in us. When we are agreeing with something, when we are disagreeing with something, when we are afraid of something, when we are wanting to cling to something, when we are trying to get rid of something, when there is anger arising, when there is attraction, as we bring attention to these processes, what is happening inside, we will see that there is one aspect which is connected with the conditioning, but as you are able to watch these things working in you, you are experiencing also more. You are connecting to the undercurrent factors, the hidden factors, that what is not so obvious. We are starting to see aspects which are related to it. So consciousness of that what is going on in us becomes the basis to be free from the past, free from the conditioning, and also to be free to look, to consider, to understand the situation, the other, the reality in a direct way, in an experiential way. Democracy is very valuable as an orientation. It is one of the aspects in our time, one of the ways of going about our living together, where we respect and accept each other, at least in the beginning, at least as a perspective. We begin with that, accepting and respecting everyone, and giving everybody a certain chance, a certain responsibility, a certain dignity, which is through this perspective brought into awareness. The thing is, theoretically, as a perspective, as a concept, as a structure, it is interesting, valuable, but it becomes healthy, it becomes alive, it becomes really a development only when more and more people are understanding it rightly, considering it more deeply. considering something more wakefully and deeply is where consciousness is playing a role. And consciousness means we are not only thinking in logical, rational terms around something, we are also observing that what is going on in the process of thinking itself in us, what is undercurrently happening behind our reactions. That is why it becomes very significant, because that is how we are not limited by our conditioning, and we are able to really accept ourselves, respect ourselves, as well as accept and respect the other. In our normal conditioned way of looking, we are judging ourselves, we are judging the other, and in a way we are in some kind of struggle with ourselves, trying to change ourselves, trying to fit with the expectation of how it is supposed to be, more concerned about our image, more concerned about what impression we make on the others. But as our awareness comes to all these processes, you see that you are going more deep into yourself. From there you are gaining a little distance to these automatic processes. And that is very, very significant. That is consciousness, and that is the step to freedom. Freedom is not just only the apparent aspect of freedom where we are able to do what we find is good, and as long as it's not harming the others, as long as it's not going destructively to say, express and manifest and be creative in our way with our expression, the freedom of expression, the freedom of living healthily. So, but that all becomes really, in a deeper sense, valuable and healthy only when it is combined with consciousness. Because through consciousness we are beginning to see what are our real challenges. And the real challenge is not coming from the other. The other is only provoking things and touching things which are in our conditioning. In this interactive process, we are discovering ourselves, we are discovering and understanding life more deeply. We are starting to understand what is possible, what is not possible. So, in this process of discovering ourselves, we are learning many things. Yesterday, one friend was putting a question which was a little coming here a little late, so we couldn't go directly into it. But I would like to bring this aspect now. We learn in a different way when we bring consciousness in. It is not learning more words. It's not learning about and around something. It is not trying to make theories and to convince somebody and to change something. It is not connected with just using certain knowledge in some limited way. When you bring consciousness, you are starting to see the interconnected factors, the implication of certain steps. You are starting to see where it leads to, what is possible. And through consciousness, you can go on learning. Because sometimes you see certain things, oh, it's going in the wrong direction, it's going different than how you really found it valuable. But through your own conscious presence to the situation, you are able to see the mistake and correct the mistake. So this possibility of ongoing correction, ongoing learning, ongoing new orientation to the situation and the reality, that is what consciousness does. And consciousness is much more, because consciousness is also opening the vision to perceive the reality the way it is. So many things which you take for granted in life, the more you become alert, the more it becomes clear to you it is not so to be taken for granted. Not only freedom cannot be taken for granted, our own reality, our own life, this body, this personality, the world, the surroundings, the more we are alert, the more we see, life is an ongoing, moving and changing process. And birth and death, which are two aspects, like two shores of the life through which the river of life is flowing, has a significance. Normally we are afraid of death. We are conditioned, especially in our modern world. Death is seen more like a taboo theme, and people try to go around it when something is touching, frightening, brings insecurity, or is bringing the association of sadness and pain and uncertainty. We are often used to ongoingly avoid and to postpone and to distract ourselves rather than really confronting and understanding it in the right way. Bringing consciousness means also to accept not only birth but also death as part of the reality, and through that connecting to the wholeness of what life is. And this is very, very important, because when you accept the wholeness of the reality, we are not taking sides. And when you are not taking sides, you are not inwardly trapped in a conflict. It's very valuable to understand it rightly. Normally we are identified with one aspect and struggling against another aspect. We are trying to improve ourselves. We are in a certain kind of fighting approach, trying to change ourselves, trying to change the others, trying to change the surroundings, because we think that we have to bring it into a kind of perfect situation. But this perfection is a concept in the mind. It's good to have an orientation like that, but we need again and again to gain a little distance to these concepts and connect to the reality now. And that is what consciousness is all about, because bringing consciousness means you notice what's going on. And the interesting thing is, when you're not taking sides, you are in the middle. You are in a state of relaxation. You are not going into this automatic reaction of defensiveness and fighting and trying to control, trying to change, trying to convince, trying to get, manage. No. But when you are wakefully with the moment, you are able to see these processes. You can be with the situation, but yet you don't get blindly overtaken by it. So when you are able to watch the things which are going on in yourself, you are learning what reality is. We are learning what is the interconnected factors. It is a new understanding. It is not words and concepts. It is opening to the reality. It is opening to see and experience that what actually is. And through that, being able to use our mind, use our logic, but not be caught in it. See this, it's a big difference. When we are identified with the mind, identified with the conditioning, identified blindly with the body, we are just reacting without seeing the wholeness of the situation, without being able to consider the other aspects which are involved in this moment. But when you accept yourself, respect yourself, and this is, as I was telling the other days also, that is why democracy is a very valuable shift in the human development, which accepts and respects everybody and reminds everybody of their chance, of their possibility, of their responsibility, and also that what is the capacity which they have to create the reality together with the others. So it is not only understanding oneself, it is becoming a co-creator in the life process. Because we are not having a situation then that somebody else who is powerful, who has been a king or who has been a dictator or someone who has come to power through some kind of way is telling us what to do, what not to do, controlling us, giving us rules and regulations which we blindly follow or we have to follow. But democracy means you have the possibility to decide who is going into these responsible positions. You have the possibility to question, to be critical. And that is why democracy is very valuable, because it recognizes the need of criticism, the need of opposition. It recognizes the reality of polarity. Polarity is required for the game of life. Polarity is required in every game. Every game requires one team and another team, one person and another person. So it's an interplay. Because of this, it becomes very alive. It becomes a dynamism. And it is in this interplay of the polarity that we start discovering, understanding, recognizing what is all there, what is all hidden, what is all possible. So it is a learning process in this deeper sense. And it is this learning process which is not just limited to some words and concepts and labels, but which is a direct understanding of the reality the way it is, which makes us authentic because we are in touch with the reality, which makes us human because we are coming closer to ourselves and including the sensibility of our heart also, rather than being limited by the logical, rational aspect alone. And in this way, we become more human, we become more whole, we become healthy, we become true. And that is also what is liberating, because when you are not in fight with yourself, you are ready to learn, you are ready to understand, you are ready to consider. There's an openness. And this openness can stay alive only together with consciousness. And that is where we need to understand there is the inner mechanism in us, which is part of our natural process, which wants to settle, which wants to make everything comfortable, easy, practical. That is valuable. That is, in a way, how many developments in the scientific area has also come to manifest. That is where we are going, in a way, too much now when we are trying to automatize everywhere. So the automatism, up to a certain extent, is good. It makes life more easy, more comfortable. We don't need to spend too much time on trivia. We can take time to consider, to understand, to go into deeper way of connecting to each other. So the automation makes life more easy and relatively keeping us free to have time for other things. But when we are not very consciously with it, what happens is we get into a kind of settlement. We get into a certain kind of robot-like state ourselves. We don't anymore consider the deeper aspects behind our doings. We don't understand ourselves then so clearly. And then our perception, our reactions are becoming more unsensitive. That is the danger. Because there is a tendency in us to settle. And the more comfortable and convenient it becomes for us, there is all the chance that rather than going more wakefully about it, we also fall asleep in these kind of states. And therefore the automation has to be gone very carefully, very wakefully. And this is one of the greatest challenges for the humanity, for democracy, for living together, for a human way of being with each other. Because automation needs to be very carefully coordinated with our consciousness and responsible way of being with each development. Otherwise, this what was coming in the film of Stanley Kubrick, the situation where in this film 2001, A Space Odyssey, where the computer starts overtaking the whole control and the man has to deal with it. And it was a kind of life and death survival thing for the human being then in that situation. And the computer, when it goes on the way it is not going in an intelligent way which is making it valuable for the human being. Instead it becomes destructive, it is self-destructive, it is having a very limited perspective. It does not have the real understanding. The human being, through consciousness, is going beyond the logical, rational process and discovering a different way of feeling, different way of sensing, different way of connecting to each other. So we start discovering deeper aspects and develop a sensibility which makes life so significant. We start seeing that the whole life is a blessing. We start seeing that all what we take for granted is not to be taken for granted. We start seeing that there are areas where we can function in a logical, rational way, but there are areas where the logical, rational process has no basis, no possibility to understand and be with the reality of it. That is why the word which is connected with the religious dimension, the word called sacred, it has to be understood. Sacred is referring to that what is beyond the logical, rational, calculative process. That there is something deeper to be considered, there's something more valuable operating in this area. And this is a very important aspect to be recognized. Automation is making life more easy, but one should not go blindly with automation. There's a great danger, because just like it can, when used carefully, become a blessing, when used carelessly, it can also become self-destructive. The human being will feel more and more obsolete, no more relevant. It looks like the computer intelligence, the algorithms can do it all much better. So when you see yourself only on this level of logical, rational personality, you will feel that you are just there and all the things are going on without you. So you have to understand yourself, you have to go deeper into experiencing yourself And that is where you can see this automation process can be used carefully, but one has to really stay in the middle, stay wakeful, and go with the right sensibility so that it does not become a crippling of the human being, but a support for the human coexistence. There are many things which in our life, when we go carefully and wakefully, you discover and see the value of it. But when you are not considering it carefully, you start by and by taking it for granted. And you can see that yesterday also I was touching this aspect a bit. Many things we take for granted when we have it happening in a comfortable way, just like we open the tap, water comes, we put the switch on and the light comes. We put the bank card and the money comes. So we have made everything more abstract and automatic, which is making it more easy in certain level. But when we reduce everything into that level and don't connect to the origins, when we don't connect to the sense behind it all, then what happens is we start disappearing as a human being. We reduce ourselves into the same robot state because we don't understand, we don't see the value, we don't see the significance. Bringing consciousness means we understand life more deeply. We connect not only to that what is apparent, but we also connect to the origins of it. We connect to the background of it. We connect to the reality of it. That is when you see that all what we have, it is there because some intelligence, some sensibility, some consciousness process, some what we should approach very carefully, because all the names which we can give are only names for us to bridge. Somebody may call it godliness, somebody may call it Allah, somebody may call it Ishvara, somebody may call it the Great Spirit, somebody may call it Tao, and there are so many other ways in which different human societies and human beings have been relating to this wondrous, essential source from which everything is arising. When it becomes our direct experience, then it is not a word. Then we can say it's just like when we know what water is, and when we see what it does when we drink the water. When we understand it rightly and then you say, oh, what you're having there is water, or somebody says it's Wasser in German, or aqua, or Ö, or Pani, or in many other languages, it can be said in so many other ways. What makes the difference is, are we understanding it rightly, or are we only trapped in words? Consciousness brings us to the alive aspect of life. Without consciousness, we get trapped in abstractions. We reduce it into logical, rational processes. And there, getting trapped in these words and concepts without understanding it rightly, when people only collect words, collect theories, then they can become very fanatic, very dogmatic. They can fall into extremes because they get trapped in their theories and words and concepts, and they don't see what for all this is there, what is the sense behind it. It requires very careful consideration. It requires interaction, it requires communication, it requires patience, and all this comes as we learn to face ourselves with all what is there. So it is a process of learning, but it's also a process of unlearning. We have to learn to be in a different way with ourselves and the reality, and we have to unlearn the habit of blindly identifying with the logical, rational judgments and watch them without going blindly into it, nor without going blindly against it. That is how the human being becomes more ripe, inwardly rich, inwardly free. Because on the level of concepts and words and logic and rationality, we are caught in interpretations. We are caught in these words. And words without the experiencing of the reality is just hollow. We don't understand it really. And that is where we are tense, and when we are coming across someone with a different perspective or a different word or different concept, we get afraid because we don't know what it really is. We are insecure and unsure, and we are trying to hold to these words. And when somebody questions these words, we don't have an answer. We get angry, we get afraid, we get impatient, and then we start reacting and fighting and become destructive. It is not the right understanding. We have to go more into ourselves. We have to deepen our consciousness. We have to start seeing and confronting the reality directly and deeply in the present. From that basis, there's a different understanding of life. There's a different way of connecting with each other. That is how we become more realistic, more human, more authentic, true, real. And then we are also not caught in the fear blindly. The body and the mind are two aspects, but our reality is deeper. The body is born and dies. The mind comes into development. It is having different conditionings, concepts, beliefs, words. It is changing. There is fear in both these aspects, on the body level, on the mind level. But consciousness, and that is the most unique aspect of human life, that we can become conscious of all these aspects in us. We can watch the body. We can feel and experience all that what is taking place in it. We can observe our mind. We can notice what is undercurrently going on. Of course, not in a knowledge level that we have it all under control, but we start seeing how things are interconnected. And the deeper we observe, the more wakefully we are present, the more we become capable to sense and feel and understand the interconnected factors. But what it opens us is to a deeper recognition of our reality, that we are having this body, we are having this personality, but the one who is experiencing it all, the one to whom it is all happening, is not limited by that. Because you can observe it, and these are all aspects in the surroundings, in the periphery. This is a very important direction for the humanity, for the individual to go, because only when you understand yourself more deeply, you also understand the other deeply, you understand life deeply. And that is what gives us clarity and freedom, and that is what enables us to truly accept and respect each other and recognize that we are not here just to fight and prove that I'm better than somebody else. But we are here to understand. We are here as a part of a greater mystery. We are here because life, the creation, the creator, the source has made it possible that we can be here. So many things which we take for granted, it is not taken anymore as granted. We start feeling more the reality. We realize how awesome everything is, what a wonder everything is, what a beauty everything is. And you start realizing that behind the so-called good and the so-called bad, so-called beautiful and the so-called ugly, there is one process of the reality, and it needs to be understood and encountered in a careful way. Now, this can be very easily misunderstood, like many things. Let me say this more clearly. We need to have an orientation in general for the humanity as to what is valuable. To be loving is valuable because when we are loving, we are considering not only what I want on a conditioned level, but also considering the other, the reality where we include. And it has value because the reality is, when you perceive it deeply, an interconnected reality. We are part of one reality. We are part of one interconnected process. We arise from the same source. So those who have gone deeper are reminding, awaken to the reality. So this deepening of the awareness is very significant. That enables us to realize that life is an ongoing dynamism, and in that the polarities, although they are apparently in contradiction to each other, but they are together creating the dynamism of life. And those who understand that polarities, the opposition, the critics, those who are apparently against you, the opposite team, they are all valuable because that through that life is becoming alive. The dynamism of life is manifesting. Through that we are starting to understand and discover and experience ourselves more deeply. That is how we start seeing that, oh, we can understand each other's reality. We can see that the other is deep within like me. Everybody in different ways want to come in terms with life. Everybody in different ways wants to be happy, want to be loved and to love, want to enjoy life, want to have fun, want to celebrate, want to be free. So once this becomes conscious to us, that deep within we all have the same orientation, and when we understand it rightly, then we see that those who are critical are as much and sometimes even more important in life like those who are friendly to us. We need both. So I say sometimes to those friends who are coming in my seminars and courses, from your side, see that there are friendly friends and unfriendly friends. But from your side, look at everybody as a friend, so that you are not going blindly into fighting, but into understanding, into considering. And when you consider it carefully, you see that we need to connect to everybody from a state of alertness and compassion. Because only when you are compassionate towards yourself and also to the other, you can understand. Otherwise, we are already having a fighting approach, and we are in struggle, and we are caught in a certain kind of belief about who we are and what the other is. But when we are not going blindly into this fighting approach and consciously bringing an alertness to see, where we are sympathetic, compassionate, considering, then suddenly we realize, oh, it is very different than what I imagined it to be. Then you start discovering all that intelligence, all that care which is behind the whole manifestation of life, all that playfulness, all that aesthetic sense, all that beauty, all that celebration which is behind the whole manifestation of the diversity of life. Then you realize that every little detail in this life process is not accidental. Everything has its value, everything has its sense. And that is where we naturally, spontaneously feel so blessed, so grateful, so thankful that we can be part of this wonder, we can be part of this celebration, that we are blessed to be in this body, we are blessed to be in this life process on this earth. But it is not something blindly to believe. Just because somebody is saying that to you and you believe it, it won't work. Because till you consider and confront and bring awareness in your life, you may know many things, you may have read, you may have discussed, you may have argued, but without bringing that awareness and understanding in the moment, in the present, when something provoke you, something touch you, something question you, something disturb your status quo, you are reacting simply from an unconscious, automatic level based on your basic conditionings. That is why it becomes very necessary through consciousness to gain a distance to this automatic process in oneself and be able to see the interconnected factors in each moment, be open to consider it. And that is how we become alive. That's how we become alert about the fact that we are part of the celebration of life. But let us not put it in this one-sided way which can be misunderstood. When I say it, it is a very responsible process. We have to experientially understand it. It is not just rosy and convenient and pleasant. Only when we understand it rightly, then we see that behind the pleasant and the unpleasant, behind that what is good and that what is bad, behind that what is easy and that what is difficult, behind that what is pleasurable and behind that what is problematic, there is a chance hidden. There's an invitation of life to learn something through that, to discover something through that, to understand and to manifest something which is hidden in us and which can become alive through this interaction. So it's a very delicate thing, and that is why I have been mentioning to many friends that you have to learn to go about life with the right approach. I use one expression called life surfing. I have been making seminars with this title also for many period, and some places we were having this, we call the life surfer's house and all that. The life surfing is a very beautiful perspective, because a surfer who is going on the surfboard with wind and the waves has accepted the challenge of the wind and the waves. So he's not in fighting approach, but he is more approaching in a playful way. So he or she who goes into this surfing process, or like in the sailing, it is similar. They are accepting it, and there is no motor that you can force something, and that is also very important, because you are not going with some fixed concept, but you have to be present. You have to have an orientation. You have to understand it, but you have to be present to every change of the wave, every direction of the wind, every process of dynamism, what is happening in the interactive process. And then you have to find your way. Those who are into the surfing, they enjoy it because they have understood. They're approaching it in a certain way. So I use the expression life surfing because that is the quality with which we can approach life. That's a quality through which we can discover and experience the true significance of being human, the true meaning of coexistence. One can come to this understanding from different ways. One can come through questioning. One can come through being good and trying to be loving. Because when you are trying to be good and trying to be loving in life, considering each other's reality also, you are opening your heart, you are opening yourself. You are going beyond this narrow idea of the I, which says, I want this, I don't want this, into what is sensible now, what is good now, what is intelligent now. So you are opening yourself to the deeper intelligence. And that is very, very important. Because that is how you come to realize that the reality is behind the diversity, behind all that variety and differences in appearance, deep within, inseparably interconnected. It is a way of putting it. You have to experience it yourself. And only your direct experience can make sense. So this is the kind of learning which is happening, which is needed, which is making all the difference. Because what you learn through words and concepts can be the starting to give you the orientation. But it is in practice, it is in living. And it's an individual thing, because it's not that you do something collectively and no, you have to look at yourself. You have to bring the attention to that what is taking place in you. So that is connecting to the wholeness of the reality. You are not only focusing on one aspect, but your vision is becoming inclusive. You are seeing how your mind is interpreting things, but you are also seeing what is behind it, what is going on, and what are the other aspects of the reality. So we connect and bridge to all that what is there without being trapped in one side or the other side. That makes it possible that we can really have a healthy, intelligent, loving way of being together. But let us not misunderstand it as if it is a kind of ideal goal which we can manage and force. Life is very mysterious. Life is having its dynamic process. But our part as a human being is to orient to that what is good, that what is creative, that what is intelligent, that what is loving. And in orienting to this, we recognize the wondrousness of the whole life process. And that makes us grateful that enables us to live gracefully in deep state of gratitude. This is very, very important. And these are not qualities which you are just trying to manage to put on an image. No. When this comes to you naturally, through your understanding, through your direct experiencing, and it's not showing off. You are not feeling yourself superior to anybody or inferior to anybody. You see that when your heart is open, when you are awake, when you are alert, when you are present, you see. So it is learning to see the reality the way it is. And democracy opens a very beautiful direction for humanity to develop, to understand, to support and help each other. And let us be also aware of this fact. When everybody is at the same time completely clear and free and understanding everything, there won't be any dynamism. So in the very nature of the reality, there are different human beings in different states of development. Like a garden where there are different plants in different states of flowering. But everybody is coming towards flowering. Only that in human life, the flowering is not happening automatically as a part of the evolutionary process. It is also an individual initiative, an individual determination and the willingness which is playing a very important and decisive role. We are blessed to be in this period of the life process on the earth now. And with all the diversity, with all the contradictions, with all the challenges, we are having to make inner decision to understand ourselves in life more directly and deeply, decision to consider reality without blindly holding to beliefs and concepts. Recognizing what leads us when we are following the approach of blind reactions of anger and hate and negativity, provoking fear, provoking unlovingness in others. The approach of force and intimidation and hate leads us more into entanglement, more into blindness, and becomes destructive to ourselves and to each other. And to destroy is very easy. We don't need to do much thing for that. The automatism in us is going in that direction. Life wants us to rise above this automatism in us, understand the automatism and learn to use it as a good instrument. The mind, when you understand it rightly and use it, it becomes a valuable instrument. But when you are trapped in the logical, rational part and get bound by the personality blindly, that is what we call the entanglement in the ego. Every child needs an ego, paradoxically, at the beginning, but we need to go beyond it. We need to rise above it. That is why human life is very unique, very challenging. But it is the greatest adventure to discover oneself, to awaken to the reality. And democracy is creating a basis where we can open ourselves, where we support each other. That what is happening inside can manifest outside in the form of democracy. That is why democracy is not just a system which is some theory which is planted by somebody. It is something of a organic development. This is something which is connected with the inner development in human beings, and more human beings who become aware and alert start living this, then we support each other, we accept and respect everybody in different stages of development, and we don't condemn anybody, but we try to support. When people make mistakes, people go unsensibly, people go destructively, we answer to it without ourselves getting trapped in destructive processes, without ourselves letting ourselves get bound to anger and misunderstandings of different kind. So it is taking responsibility in a deeper way, in a human way. And this is very, very valuable. I would like now to take some time for any questions which anybody may have. We wakefully have come to the recognition of the oneness of life, the oneness of the reality, the deeply interconnectedness of the whole life process. So any movement which is going towards that opening to the reality will help us to become more clear and healthy, be healthy. But if we are only trying blindly to hold to the narrowness and go on fighting and being hateful and angry and trying to justify yourself only through the logical, rational process, you will remain in tension. You will remain being trapped in a fighting, restless state. Only when you understand, when you are not in fight with yourself, when you are not suppressing your sensibility, because in everyone there is also all these aspects, because we are part of that one reality. So it is not that somebody is having the heart and somebody has no heart. It is a question, has somebody allowed the heart, or is somebody still fighting? Those who stop fighting with themselves and start to consider and understand, they are the ones who allow the heart. They become more hearty. But it doesn't mean that the others don't have the heart. Those who have understood, those who have become capable to see this, need to create bridges, need to support in a creative, patient, intelligent, sympathetic, playful, loving way that the other also can realize it. It's very easy to condemn somebody, it's very easy to punish, it's very easy to put a negative label and feel better than the other. It doesn't need much understanding. But to really answer to the situation and to live the potential of intelligence, the potential of love, that is what compassion is all about. Conscious compassion. That is what opening of the heart is. Any other question? So if no question is there, we conclude for this evening now.